Milwaukee Bucks basketball is back. Although it is preseason and there was no Giannis, but we got our first look at Myles Turner as a Milwaukee Buck. Plus, we got to look at some interesting concepts, some lineups, and Ryan Rollins looked fantastic. We'll talk about all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked On Network and co-host of the Technical Foul Podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod and the founder of BrewHoop.com. We truly do appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked On Bucks your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. And Frank, we finally have some basketball to talk about. Another long off season for the Bucks, and we finally have some basketball to talk about. Like I mentioned, there was no Giannis in this game, but we got a glimpse at a starting lineup that, might just be missing Giannis in place of one particular person. We got to look at the bench unit, got our first look to see how this Bucks offense would play with the pace that they're looking to play at. So many different things to look at here from this game, and we'll get to all of it. But let's start with the starting lineup, because once it was announced, I think you had a similar reaction to me, seeing that it was going to be Kevin Porter Jr., AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., Kyle Kuzma, and Myles Turner. We knew Turner was a starter. We knew Kevin Porter Jr. was a starter. We know Giannis will be a starter, but there's been a lot of conversation around those other two starting spots. When you saw the lineup today, what was your reaction to it? Was it more so of like, hey, I think this might be the starting lineup with Giannis in place of Kuz? Or were you thinking like this might be a smokescreen and who knows what to believe and who Kuz is replacing in the starting line, if he is replacing someone in the starting lineup, so on and so forth. But where were you at?
Well, anytime I think about first preseason games of the year and starting lineups, I think back to, I guess it would have been 2006, Camille. The Bucks had acquired, making sure I didn't totally screw up the timeline. Maybe it was, was it 05? Bogut's first year. Bogut is drafted. It's the same, that training camp, they get Jamal McGlure. And the big question was like, how do you balance McGlure and Bogut, right? Like, are you going to start them at the same time? So Bogut off the bench. And I'm pretty sure, Camille, in that first preseason game, Dan Godzarich and Jamal McGlure, I believe, started together, which probably was the only time that year that those two guys started a game together, I'm guessing. I don't think anybody cares enough to go back and fact check me on this, but I'm pretty sure that happened. And ever since then, I've just thought like, I'm not going to read too much into, preseason starting lineups, et cetera. But, and I kind of joked before the game, like, I refuse to make too much out of really any preseason game, but especially a preseason game that's the first one and that doesn't have Giannis, right? Who's basically has never been more important to what the Bucks are trying to do on both ends at this point, especially offensively. So, to say that like we're seeing the Bucks like, oh, this is like the offense, right? Or something. It's like, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. And I also think back to last fall, Camille, remember when like Doc Rivers was like, oh, we're not even going to put in the offense until like we're not even basically was like, I was like basically like waiting until like November when Chris Middleton was healthy before they were going to like try and figure out like the offense. It was like, really, is that a good idea? You want to wait that long? But yeah, I was going to say that I despite all that, I had kind of mentally worked through like, okay, without Giannis last year, pretty sure Pat Connaughton started in Giannis's place when because Giannis never plays like the first preseason game. Usually there's some, whether it's this year COVID, prior year sore knees, or, just like why bother with Giannis in the preseason opener. I think last year was Pat Connaughton, and it was like, oh my God, Bucks are like 5 out. It's like, well, yeah, it's because they don't have Giannis. So, that's kind of the way it goes. But I definitely was sort of thinking through like, so to me, the big question, probably the biggest question of the preseason is, who is the starting small forward? Is it one of, as you alluded to, Gary Trent or AJ Green? I.e., do you go with the 3-guard lineup that was their best, most effective grouping last year with KPJ, Gary Trent, and AJ? Or do you go more traditional look, which I think we've been assuming would probably mean like forcing Kyle Kuzma back into starting five. I get Torian Prince is still around, although Doc did allude to Torian being in a bench role. So you can probably guess that he's not going to go back to that again. So yeah, I was definitely, I was most interested in seeing, okay, are we going to see the 3-guard lineup starting? And then I think the question after we saw that was, okay, is this because you're inserting either AJ or Gary and pushing Kyle to the 4 from the starting 3 spot, right? Which is probably not what most of us would prefer to be what was happening. Or is it Kuzma is a 6-man, 8-man, whatever he is. And with Giannis out, you're putting him in at the starting power forward spot. You're allowing Bobby to continue coming off the bench as the third big and sort of keeping him in that role, which obviously Bobby has done extremely well starting in Giannis's place, right? We've seen that for years now. So I think, yeah, it depends on kind of your perspective. We have not seen post game, for those not following baseball or not in the state of Wisconsin, there is a Brewers playoff baseball game happening like as we speak.
Yes.
So if you see me going like that, it's because I have it going on in the sideline here. So we'll see if my mood goes from happy to sad during the course of the podcast. It's probably what's happening over there. But yeah, so I don't know that we got anything definitive from that starting lineup. I think the real question is going to be what happens when Giannis is back. It sounds like, I think we heard he needs a few days before they're going to let him go back to having contact. And then I don't know if you've got the preseason schedule in front of you, but I'd be kind of surprised whenever the next preseason game is. I'd be kind of surprised if he plays. Okay, so I'm not going to expect him to play in that game either. Yep. And then I think the question is the game after that. What's the starting 5? Hopefully they're healthy, so we actually get like a true read on what Doc's intentions are. And I don't know, Camille. To me, it's like we didn't see Doc go to that starting 5 with that 3-guard lineup until literally their backs were up against the wall in the last game, ultimately of their season in Indianapolis. So it's kind of this question is like, doesn't mean obviously like you can play that lineup a lot. They did that. That was their like the fourth quarter closing lineup a lot of times. It's not like the end of the world if that group doesn't start. But Camille, I'll ask you, like, can you come up like with a strong argument to start Kyle Kuzma or someone else other than that 3-guard lineup, assuming obviously that Giannis and Myles Turner are the other guys? And again, we're kind of skipping a little bit past what happened tonight, but certainly I didn't see anything tonight that would say like, oh, you can't get away with that. Like, that's too small. I mean, I don't think tonight obviously was going to change our opinion, but where are you at this point now seeing this group, okay, actually starting a preseason game together?
Yeah, I think for myself, I'm still in the camp that the only way Kuz starting makes sense is if he's shown that he is far better as a catch and shooter, being able to space the floor, and teams are respecting that shot at this point. And that when he is driving to the rim, get those finishes, he's actually converting them. And that is his shot dice. What a lot of we talked about so far this offseason, heard it from Doc, shot diet. We want Kuz taking layups and taking threes, and that is it. Kuz made his very first shot tonight in the preseason game. It was a pump fake from the 3-point line, drove past, nice layup. I said, more of that, yes. And then he proceeded to miss
none of that
next 5 shots. Yeah, like he went 1 for 6 after that. Offensively wasn't there. He did a good job rebounding though in this game. 8 rebounds for Kuz, if I remember correctly in that one. But like, you would need a perfect Kuz situation, I think, for him to start. And all that being said, I'm still in the camp that you start that trio of guards. You start Kevin Porter Jr., AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr. As your 1, 2, and 3 in whatever order you want to put them in there. And then you pair them with Myles and Giannis in your front court. I will say I want to continue to see how Kuz kind of plays in like this nominal 4 role without Giannis on the floor here. I do think that these minutes have been interesting without Giannis in the preseason because 1, they are going to have to play some minutes without him. And 2, I think it offers a different glimpse into like who is taking on some of the shot creation and the playmaking for this team. And seeing it without Giannis on the floor is a whole different level of difficulty degrees there than when he's on the floor. So seeing him do it without him is showing me a lot. And I want to talk about Myles Turner's debut in the Bucks jersey and some of the guys that actually did flash in this game again. preseason is not so much about the results as it is about the process in which you were seeing along the way. So, Myles Turner conversation, plus some other guys who stood up. We'll talk about them right after this. But first, got to give you a talk about our friends over at FanDuel because it is football season and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, y'all. Y'all pick a bet, put down $5, and if that hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app. So whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes game time experience so much better. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little extra something riding on the action, in my personal opinion. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, Frank, like I mentioned, today we did get to see the debut of Myles Turner in this game. Not big minutes for any of the Bucs starters. The most you saw was 17 minutes from Kuzma and AJ Green here along the way. Want to talk about everybody else's performances, but Myles Turner was the big, free agent acquisition this offseason. Surprised at that with the way that the Bucs went about getting him. But did anything from Myles Turner's debut in the Bucs jersey, albeit in preseason, albeit without his partner Giannis next to him, did anything stand out to you from his game?
I think there was a sequence in the second quarter defensively that kind of, I think, highlighted, and obviously we preface this by saying, like, our pod has generally been a longtime appreciator of Brook Lopez. So I'm not about to, like, say just because now he's not on the team, like, this guy, he stinks, everything's great now, But I think what we've talked about all summer is looking for how Myles' mobility, which, look, to be clear, like, Myles is not like, he's not Bam Adebayo, right? He's not like some hyper switchable big man or something like that. But he is a guy that obviously has more mobility than Brook, who obviously is one of the more like kind of stationary paint type defenders that you're going to find, right? And I thought there was a sequence. Bam Adebayo has the ball on the left wing, live dribble. Myles comes up and plays him pretty tight. Again, not that you're worried as much as Bam took more threes last year. Myles came up and kind of pressured him a little bit, picked up his dribble, tried to make a pass. Myles deflected it, steals the ball from him. And, just thinking back to years past where Brook would often lay way off of Bam and kind of just sort of try to bait him into shooting mid-range jumpers, which, can be hit or miss. Like, sometimes he has that shot going. Like, he can definitely hit that shot. Other times, you're kind of happy if the Heat are settling for Bam mid-rangers. But in this game, I thought, you saw that Myles was able to play a more aggressive brand of defense against Bam than, you would certainly see Brook normally play, especially higher up on the floor. And then I think the other piece that was interesting was then the next time down the floor, we saw Myles do something that we are used to seeing Brook do, which was, I think it was on Wiggins. He kind of helped over, moved his feet, blocked a shot, kept the ball in play, and pushed the ball the other and sort of triggered a break the other way. So, we've talked a lot about the Bucs defense and how much better the Bucs defense needs to be in order for them to kind of realize like what they want to be this year. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've done the same thing, right? Like I hesitate to look at Myles and say like, oh, like they're going to be better on defense because like Myles is such a huge upgrade on Brook. Like I want to be careful that I don't kind of oversimplify and just, rose colored glasses and just think that like
It's
magically
and everything.
exactly. Yeah. Because like, Myles definitely has, like regressed. Like, I mean, he was like a defensive player of the year, all defensive type guy a few years ago. Has not, by reputation and certainly I'd say by like my eye test, like I don't think he hasn't been that guy consistently in Indiana. And we'll see. I mean, can he kind of unlock another level with the Bucs? I mean, the Bucs really need him to get back to something closer to what he was. And obviously the Bucs are no strangers to taking, aging. I mean, he's 29, so he's not that old, but whatever, Brook was 30, 31, I think when he came in, had never been the level of defender that he was before he kind of became part of Bud's defense. So hey, low bar, right? If you could just become, an all defensive, defensive player of the year candidate guy again, like that would be great. So we'll see. But I think, again, we talked about Doc's comments in the media over the past week or so about like how they couldn't play the way they want to play, et cetera. And Dame Lillard and Brooke Lopez seemed like the guys that were sort of being, subtweeted verbally there.
Through the media, yeah.
And I thought we at least saw some hints of that tonight with what, the way Myles is able to defend out in space a little bit more, and then also obviously still doing kind of the typical kind of big man stuff. So definitely excited to see what that looks like with Giannis, and kind of interesting. I think like what does that look like in terms of the whole holistic defense. I thought the other piece that was interesting, I don't know if this kind of jumped out to you, but 15 steals, and especially in the second quarter, which overlapped a bit with like when the Heat had sort of like a lot of the guys you didn't recognize the names of, but it started to look very ragged. I don't know how many backcourt steals the Bucks had, but
and the Heat were without many point guards in this game too. I think Drew Smith was like their only true actual guard in this game.
Yeah.
Outside of North.
Yeah. So again, like a little bit of an asterisk on that. It's also not like the Bucks didn't come out like pressuring 94 feet. It wasn't exactly like, oh, now they're the Pacers or something like that, right? Which I know Doc has been hesitant to make it seem like they're just going to try to copy the Pacers, which would be sort of a fashionable thing to do. So yeah, but interesting. Certainly they seem to be, pressuring a little bit, trying to be opportunistic defensively, guys getting on the floor, all those kind of nice positive cliches. So yeah. We'll see how much of that is kind of carried over, but certainly if you go with that 3-guard lineup, we've talked about Gary and KPJ are gamblers defensively for better or worse. So I think you're going to force more turnovers that way. Ryan Rollins obviously is a guy that can force turnovers, et cetera. So I think that those were some of the things that kind of jumped out to me. But, for the most part, I think kind of typical of what you'd expect to see in a first preseason game. Not a lot of exotic stuff. The teams were not breaking out like, their zones and like, right. Did they do any like intentional like switching? Like, I don't really think so. It was very vanilla, kind of typical sort of drop defense, which kind of makes sense. It's, they're a week into camp. They're just sort of trying to get their base stuff figured out. So, it's not a game where you're going to get like great insights into like the tactics and the, backup pit, the change ups and different sort of things that they're not going deep into the bag, right? They're not even breaking out the bag tonight. It's like, what you see is what you get. It's like little league softball where they're not allowed to throw curveballs, like it's pretty much all fastballs.
They mentioned, I think it was Doc Rivers who said that for Myles Turner, they're just going to ask him to do more. Like they want Myles Turner to be Myles Turner, but just going to ask you to do a little bit more than what you did before. And when I saw him tonight, I was kind of like, I can see what they mean by just doing a little bit more, because like the raw stats of what Myles Turner gave you weren't spectacular tonight. Only 1 3-point attempt that he missed, but he did go 4 or 5 from the free throw line. He had 2 blocks, only 2 rebounds, but he had a steal too during his time on the court. Just a little bit of everything I felt from Myles Turner was done in this game. And honestly, the free throw attempts and just some of the times that he got the ball, like I mentioned, one of the things for me coming into this game, watching it, was like, who's going to be the shot creators and who's going to be the playmakers for this team? And there were times when the shot clock is winding down. It's like, okay, well, who's going to be the guy to try to take this shot? And there was a possession in particular where Kevin Porter Jr. had the ball, and I think it's the first quarter. It's like 7-8 seconds left. And I'm like, okay, he's going to dance now, because even he mentioned like understanding when for him to be aggressive. Like, hey, if it's early in the shot clock, not the best time for me to put up like a mid-range shot or do something like that. But if the clock's winding down, 6, 7, it's time for me to get into the butter bag. Like it's butter time. Like I'm gonna go and do something. So I expected Kevin Porter Jr. to just, figure out what he could do with the ball. But he kicked it to Myles Turner with like 5 seconds left. And Myles is on perimeter dribbling. And then he tried to drives and he gets fouled on his way like to like the free throw line area or something like that. And I was kind of like, really interesting to me that Myles Turner is the guy here at the end of the shot clock where it's like, give us something real quick. And who those guys turned out to be throughout this game. I thought that Gary Trent Jr. was also in that role quite a few times in this game. He also had, I believe, 5 free throws in this one, or 6 free throws for Gary Trent Jr., 4 or 6 from the free throw line in this one, of someone I'm just like, hey, we need you to make something happen. And there's a few more things I feel like the team was trying to make happen throughout this game, especially defensively when that bench unit came in for this game. And bench unit can mean a lot because before the game, Doc said, I want to get all 20 guys available into this game. And indeed he did. So some quick hits on some of those guys who got in later in the game, the bench units that impressed, and some things that we hope carry over into the regular season. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after this. But first, let's talk a little bit about Monarch Money. Because if you are anything like me, you might not be able to name all your financial accounts. Most people can't, or even what it's worth, whether you're talking about 401ks, properties, and investments. And when you don't have the full picture of something, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Personally, I love how easy it is for me and my husband to manage our finances together through the app. Like, it's built to support multiple users sharing finances. And I love that. It helps making budgeting for our household a lot easier. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Okay, Frank, some of the guys here that, don't get a lot of the spotlight, might not have been talked a lot about so far this offseason. I thought they shined when the bench unit came in the first quarter, where Doc went 10 deep in the first quarter with his goal of trying to get all 20 guys into the game, which he did do. But when that bench unit came in and you saw Cole Anthony out there with Ryan Rounds in the backcourt, the pressure and just the havoc that those two were causing was so fun to watch. Like, as the first quarter ended, when I was looking at the stats and I was like, okay, the Bucks made one more three than the Heat. They were out rebounded by the Heat in the first quarter. And you're like, how do you win a quarter by 7 points in this way? And you're like, oh, you forced all these turnovers. Oh, and you were able to get 13 points off of the 7 turnovers you forced in the first quarter. Like, I see. I get it now. I get it. But what we saw from Ryan Rollins, I believe he had like 5 deflections in the first quarter alone. Second half, when he came out there in a really rough lineup to start the third quarter, he scored 8 points for them really quick. I thought Ryan Rollins looked good. I was like, Cole Anthony is really auditioning to be the new Pat Connaughton. He got hit in the face, laceration on the chin. He didn't return to this game. Needed stitches. He's been getting beat up all training camp, apparently. So this is on par for him. But I did think that the two of them in the game provided a lot of spark, and I was really impressed with what I saw from Ryan Rollins.
Yeah, it was interesting. So let me start with KPJ because, he had some nice plays. I forgot what he ended up, but was he 4 out of 6 or 10 points, something like that. But the thing that stood out for me was 0 3-point attempts, right? I don't think he took a three.
Yep.
Did not appear to have any interest, certainly, in pulling up off the dribble for a 3-pointer. And you alluded to, kind of playing some hot potato late in the clock as well, which, is a problem. Like, if he's not going to look at all for pull-up threes, honestly, the interesting thing is I think you have a lot more pressure to play Gary and AJ if KPJ is going to be this hesitant to shoot threes. Because if you've got, one of those 2 3-point shooters and then a more typical small forward, right? I mean, Kuz isn't really a typical small forward, but like he is more typical in the sense that he's not like a great 3-point shooter. Even Torian Prince, who's obviously a very accurate 3-point shooter, does not take tons of them, does not get them up at a very high volume. And Myles obviously is very good, right? Like similar to Brooke, like above average in terms of like a big man for sure. But yeah, it's interesting. And obviously there was a lot of, you and Justin talked about it. Eric wrote about it. The idea of, how many threes could the Bucks shoot this year and trying to shoot more threes. I mean, my main takeaway was like, Giannis, it's hard to ever shoot a high volume of threes when, you have a guy like Giannis with 35 to 40% usage taking basically no threes. So it's sort of like ironic, like, as much as he creates open threes for everybody else, like just the fact that he himself uses so many shots, which he should, like, correctly, he is not shooting threes. He's taking extremely high percentage twos, getting to the foul line a lot. So you love that. So kind of my point is like, I don't think you really need to have like a top 5, like, 3-point rate in the league necessarily, because as long as it's those, Giannis high percentage twos, that is kind of keeping you from doing that. Both KPJ, I think we saw it again today, like KPJ, Gary Trent, Giannis, and Bobby have very high long 2 rates. I think they shoot like 25 to 30% of their shots are like in like the mid to long 2 range. That's very high. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, they have to eradicate all those or something like that. Giannis, obviously, it's like a rhythm thing. I think it's important that he has that mid-ranger. With Bobby, I think you'd rather him shoot fewer of those like turnaround fadeaway shots, and go more towards like those little like righty push shots. When he's going to his right shoulder, i.e. turning baseline from the left block, shooting fadeaway threes or shooting fadeaway twos, bad. Turning middle to shoot those little push shots that he's really good at, good. But with KPJ, like, he's dancing, he's settling for a lot of like tough mid-rangers. He's very good at those. Like, it was like comical, the accuracy he had on long 2s when he first joined the Bucks last spring. Like some of the games that he had where he was just like cooking in fourth quarters, I think against the Clippers, maybe in one of like the revenge game. Yeah. I mean, it was just kind of crazy, but you're not going to, be a top 10 offense, like relying on KPJ to shoot tons of long 2s. So I think that was one of the first thing that kind of jumped out at me was like this should be like, I think KPJ needs to be more deliberate in trying to hunt some open pull up threes. Again, he'll get some, spot up ones, especially when Giannis is out there. And he's a guy who has led the league in spot up 3 points percentage. When he was in Houston, he can definitely hit spot up to threes. He hit 40% from 3 last year. He's about 35, 36% career from 3. But like in Houston, he had some higher, like 7 or 8 threes per 36 years. So he has gotten threes up at a good volume at different parts of his career. But that's something I'm watching, because I think it is going to be limiting for the Bucks offensively if they don't have a lead ball handler that is willing to do that. Yeah. Because the thing is too, like Cole Anthony, we saw like he will dance and dribble. He is much more willing to pull on a pull-up 3, but he's not great at threes either. Like, I think of him as a good 3-point shooter, but like
by the numbers, no.
Yeah, you look at the numbers, like he's at like 35, 36% as well. Like not great. And Rollins, I think, has become a really steady 3-point catch and shoot guy, which we saw a couple times tonight again. But you still don't want to like have to tell Ryan, like, go just manufacture, buckets for yourself regularly, right? You still need him really more doing things in the flow of the offense. So again, one preseason game, etc. But certainly my my concerns about the Bucks, ultimately like their ceiling being dictated by their lead guards not being able to create enough offense by themselves. Like, yeah, like this, they kind of did the stuff that you expect them to do, and they did the things that they like to do pretty well. But and again, like we're a bit spoiled coming from Dame Lillard, who's like, like the pull-up 3 king. But I think they have to, let's just say, I think they got to find a bit more of a balance there. But yeah, I mean, like, I think with the question you're hinting at with Rollins, it's like, is Kevin Porter Jr. actually better than Ryan Rollins? I mean,
we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, I definitely would hesitate to say anything definitive. I'm happy to start with KPJ. I think he's got a little bit more playmaking juice. And showed some chemistry with Giannis, but we'll see. I mean, if KPJ like starts the year in a slump, like, are you going to give him like a really long leash? Like, I don't think so. I think you go with one of these other guys and you see what works, which, in a weird way is maybe what benefit they have. Like, there's no sacred cows when it comes to the Bucks guards. Like, if things not working, like Doc can make a change. And I don't think, you're not going to, well, KPJ maybe has a history of perhaps, like not being the best citizen, but certainly since he's been here, he's I think kept his head down and done what needs to be done. So hopefully that just continues.
Yeah, and one more thing on Ryan Rollins here as we wrap up the show here. He mentioned that for himself, one thing that he knew that he was going to have to do and kind of work on this year is one, helping getting everybody into their spots and kind of just running the offense, and also showing his capabilities and getting comfortable with scoring the ball more. And he was like, I'm capable of doing that. I just kind of have to go back a little bit to my college days where I was on the ball a little bit more. It's just I got to then find my spots in the actual flow of the game, in addition to like, hey, worked on this in practice, kind of going back to college, but just kind of finding those spots. So I'll be curious to kind of watch Ryan Rollins throughout the year too. I'm seeing like how aggressive he can get with his shot selection as he gets more comfortable in the flow of things. But there are still so many other aspects from this game to touch on that we didn't even have time to today. So I'm sure that me and Justin will be able to kind of continue wrapping that up. And then next thing you know, it's going to be a whole other game to talk about. Like we're almost back into the flow where we're having games, multiple games a week. I know the next preseason game for the Bucks does come in on Thursday of this week at home. So
Camille, I am now the Chris Livingston guy.
You're taking Justin's spot.
I'm taking Justin's spot. I think we established last time I was in the pod that I'm now the Chris Livingston loyalist. Justin has seeded his Livingston fandom. So now that I'm on board, Chris Livingston comes through with a really nice fourth quarter performance. So shout out to Chris. A couple of drives where he just put his head down, used that strength, got to the rim for finishes, and then two kind of like, again, sort of 1-2 dribble, pull up mid-ranger shots. Honestly, that's the kind of stuff I think
comfortable too.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff, honestly, he did at Kentucky. And look, in the grand scheme of the universe, like, is Chris Livingston going to, make a career in the NBA by doing like shooting mid-range jumpers? No, I don't think so. I think the 3-point shot is absolutely critical. That's something that, obviously we still need to see. We saw it a bit in Vegas this year. But credit to Chris. I mean, he's playing for his job. We don't know what's going to happen. And I think when you look at the guys that are sort of under threat, I thought Ajax was fine. I thought like I kind of did Ajax stuff. I don't think he made like any horrendous mistakes. But yeah, Chris, I thought popped certainly more than Tyler Smith, who I would kind of keep at the bottom of my totem pole.
And Gary Harris, who did not impress during his time in this preseason opener.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't even think they could waive Gary Harris because he has that next year player option. And I don't think they can even eat that because of the 15% rule that they can't, basically owe more than, 50% of their future cap or whatever in future years. So unfortunately, waiving Gary Harris does not appear to be an option. I haven't even really looked into that, but I'm guessing that's the reality. But Gary Harris did not look like a guy that was the old Gary Harris. But yeah, shout out to Chris Livingston doing kind of what he can. And wait, I was about to call him Cormac McCarthy. Wait, the author, Ryan. The author Cormac McCarthy. No, Cormac Ryan, who we saw in Vegas, hits a three. Had a couple very competent defensive plays as well in the very late going. So shout out to Cormac Ryan. This is probably the only time.
Nance too. Knocked down some threes. He was out there looking impressive.
I was so eager to get on
the Chris Livingston train.
I totally ignored that Pete Nance, who was my guy in Vegas and is the ultimate just competent, dribble handoff 3-point shooting big man. He did that. I mean, he was probably the biggest reason the Bucks held on to this win when you look at what he had 14 points or something. So, oh my God, I can't believe I was so eager to talk about Chris Livingston. I ignored my guy, Pete Nance, but anyway, he's on his two-way. So we got time to celebrate Pete Nance and all his artistic stylings.
Yeah, he got his love there, but that'll wrap up the show for today. Again, like I said, there is still so much more to talk about from this preseason game, so we'll continue to do that over on Locked On Bucks throughout the week. For your second listen, make sure you go and find Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, and he's going to make sure to get y'all right, help you win your leagues, and make you a smarter NBA fan along the way. So find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. as you know, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we truly do appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Bucks. For Frank and myself, we'll catch you later.